Dante Moore is an Oregon Duck, and he's not the only impact transfer that Dan Lanning and company have added right now. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. If you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review. Please and thank you wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedon. Use code LOCKEDON for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. So Oregon's got Dante Moore. Oregon's got two other transfers that we're going to talk about today on the show. Sometimes I wonder, once the season ends, once there are no more games, what does one discuss on a podcast such as this? And then the news keeps rolling in and I realize, oh yeah, those are the sorts of things that we talk about. So Dante Moore, let's just do a quick timeline recap here. He verbally commits to the Ducks in July of 2022 for the class of 2023 as he was, according to a lot of sites, the number one overall quarterback recruit in the cycle. He then decommits and flips to UCLA in December, right around National Signing Day, after Kenny Dillingham, post 2022 Civil War, went down to take the head coaching job at Arizona State. He'd been his primary recruiter. He goes to UCLA. He has a season in which he throws a few too many interceptions to hold on to the starting job. And now he is right back to where he once verbally stated he was going to begin his career. Dante Moore looks like he'll be your Oregon starting quarterback in 2025. So Dillon Gabriel's in. He'll be the starter for this year. Dante Moore is in. He'll likely be the starter in 2025. This is a perfect fit. I did not always feel this way about Dante Moore. In the context of him starting in 2024, I didn't think that was the best option for the Ducks. I still believe that to be the case. But if you're talking about 2025 and him developing behind a veteran quarterback like Dillon Gabriel, I don't know that there's a more perfect spot for Dante Moore to be. So I don't know if this will satisfy the Oregon fans who, want to have a developmental quarterback or someone who comes in from the high school ranks and, is a Duck for a couple of years and waits his turn like Ty Thompson was going to. But Dante Moore is going to get that chance. And I think that Ty Thompson could have had that chance potentially, but he's running out of years of eligibility. So Dante Moore is not. Now, one question that I'm sure people are going to ask, because I've already been asked it before, is he going to redshirt next year? And I don't think he will. I don't think he will. I don't think he needs to. I think that he's someone who wants to eventually make it to the NFL. So he wouldn't probably use that extra year of eligibility. I think that, if he's Oregon starter in 2025, he could, in that year alone, bolster himself to be an NFL prospect. If he does well, but not well enough to maximize his draft potential, he could come back in 2026 and start if he wants to, I suppose. But I don't see him redshirting to add another extra year of college eligibility. I think he's got a better arm than Dillon Gabriel and projects as a better potential NFL prospect there, but he has to develop, and that is what he's going to do. And that's what he's going to do in an offense that has developed great quarterbacks, or produced, I should say, great quarterback seasons. And we're going to get to see just how Will Stein is able to develop a young quarterback. But I mean, the early returns with this guy are really good. You look at the quarterback that he had a year ago, Frank Harris at UTSA, veteran guy, had a lot of success. Bo Nix this year, a lot of success. He'll have Dillon Gabriel in 2024, Dante Moore for 2025. Here's the other reason I feel like this is such a perfect fit for the Ducks. The backup quarterback situation never matters until it does. You don't think about who's your backup quarterback until suddenly your starter gets dinged up. And then you're going, hey, who's our backup quarterback? Well, Dante Moore, I don't think is ready to be a high-level starter right now. But is he a high-level backup? Absolutely. A guy with that much talent and real in-game experience. Now, it's, the old line I've brought up on the show before, Loki in Infinity War. If you consider failure experience, I consider experience, which is an all-time line and always bears repeating here on the show. He is someone who, if Dillon Gabriel had to miss a game, for instance, depending on who it's against, I'd feel reasonably confident in Dante Moore's ability to go out there, start the game, and ultimately win it. Now, are either of these guys, Dillon Gabriel, Dante Moore, good enough to, be Heisman contenders or, feel like they win a game on their own? I don't think so, no. The good news is I feel good about Oregon's offensive line, which got bolstered with an addition that I'll get to here in just a moment. And I feel good about, where Oregon is trending defensively. There are still pieces that need to be inserted into the puzzle because they lost several from this year. But I think they're trending well on that side of the ball. I think the coaching staff is clearly good defensively. I think that all of this makes a lot of sense. It makes sense for Dante Moore. It makes sense for Oregon. And it just puts Oregon on really solid footing to not have to worry about the quarterback position. Like if Gabriel has to go out just for a few plays, you don't have to come in and just hand the ball off with Dante Moore. You can call a couple of, perhaps more rudimentary, but still you can throw the ball. You can call some pass plays. And I think that's a good thing for the Ducks. And, I always say in the context of Oregon football, the best backup quarterback is Brian Bennett. When Brian Bennett came into the game, there was a drop off, but was there still a baseline level of production? Yes. And I think that Dante Moore in this offense, I think he's perfect for Will Stein's offense. I really do. A pro-style pocket quarterback who has mobility, but it's not necessarily a feature of his game. I think that's perfect for what Will Stein does offensively. And I think the way that he gets the ball out on the perimeter and makes some defined reads and throws and, gives a lot of easy options. I think that'll help Dante Moore kind of get his confidence back to where, it needs to be for him to maximize his potential. And I think learning from a guy in Dillon Gabriel, who's going into his 6th year of college football, is a tremendous, tremendous asset for a guy who was starting at UCLA and clearly wasn't ready to do so. And he showed he has so much talent and has so much potential that Chip Kelly said, yeah, we want to start him over Ethan Garbers because I thought he'd won the job from him. But then he lost it back, and Garbers was clearly a little bit better, and Dante Moore's got a higher ceiling than Garbers. Dante Moore's got a lower floor, but right now that doesn't matter because he's set to be Oregon's backup, and that's a pretty talented backup. And, what was once thought to be Oregon's quarterback of the future is once again looking to be Oregon's quarterback of the future. Just goes to show you. This applies to fans as well, and fans should certainly remember this. Everywhere you go, don't create a negative impression with a kid for a particular school. If he chooses another program, wish him well. Wish him well. Don't leave him with any semblance of negativity because you never know what's going to happen in the portal world. And it's hard to have predicted what was going to happen with Dante Moore here, but this is all working out in Oregon's favor. Oregon has now brought in 2 of the top 10 24/7 sports-rated quarterbacks in this 2024 recruiting cycle via the portal. So I think they are in a really, really good spot, both for 2024 and 2025. I will say, and drop all your questions in the YouTube comments or on X, formerly known as Twitter, as well, at @Smalls_55 or at Locked On Ducks, DMs and mentions wide open. You can also have priority mailbag access over at SUBTEXT as well. Free 14-day trial. Then it's just $5 a month. If you have questions about anything like this, by all means, let me know. One that I think is pretty obvious is, what does this mean for Austin Novosad? I'll be shocked if he doesn't transfer. And that's, again, you talk about portal casualties, that would certainly be one of them. Novosad's a talented kid. I think he can be a Power 5 starting quarterback. I likened him coming out of high school to Darren Thomas. Can he be an above average, a game manager, which Cam Newton, of course, is put in the news lately, but can he be, a game manager plus? That's what I described Darren Thomas and Jeremiah Masoli as. I think Thomas was better, but I think both of those guys, neither were Heisman contenders, but they were above average quarterbacks. Yeah, I think Novosad can be that sort of guy. But if I had to choose between Austin Novosad and Dante Moore, I agree with the scouting community, which is Moore has got more potential. Doesn't mean Novosad doesn't have any. Don't be surprised if Novosad ends up entering the transfer portal. But plenty of other Ducks have entered the transfer portal, and some have entered the portal to arrive to Oregon. A running back and an offensive lineman who Dillon Gabriel will be playing with as of next season. As of this very moment and every moment before and after it, I'm recommending you go check out eBay Motors, because eBay Motors, here's how they operate. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts, that's a lot, for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Just like Will Stein might find it easy to develop Dante Moore into that perfect 5-star caliber quarterback. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Plenty more transfers have been coming to the Ducks. I'm sure we'll even hear some more. Nothing official yet on Kobe Savage, at least that I've seen or heard, but that's still a move. The Kansas State safety, 2-time all-conference performer the last couple of years, that's expected to happen. But there are a couple names that we should be aware of here as Duck fans, because there's a running back and there's an offensive lineman. So let's start with the ball carrier, Jay Harris. So he was at Division II, Northwest Missouri State, a season ago, which is just a quintessential Division II college name. They had a pretty good team over there. In 11 games, he had 100 or more yards in every single game. He went for over 1,400 yards on the ground and 14 touchdowns. That was a pretty good season. And he was a first-team AP All-American at the Division II level. So I've seen a lot of times over the years, Division I FCS players make the jump, or JUCO players make the jump. You don't hear of Division II and III guys quite as often. And so this is why this is a little bit of a unique situation. I do wonder, Lanning's from Missouri. I wonder if he's, got any ties back there. I think he brought in a coach on staff, when he first arrived that, was from that area. I don't know if there are any ties as to how they found out about this guy, but I don't look at him, both his physical profile and his film and highlights, and think, yeah, that guy was at D2 for a reason. I think it's closer to a guy of, what was the reason he was at D2? Exactly. So here's the interesting thing about him. First of all, he's got multiple years of eligibility left. So might get used to hearing the name Jay Harris, running back. Second of all, he's 6'2", 215 pounds. Interestingly enough, Dante Dowdell, who just transferred out of the Oregon running back room, was, drumroll please, coming out of high school, 6'2", 215 pounds. So this is, I think, both in roster and running style, a pretty, direct filler spot. You can debate as long as you'd like as to who's going to be better. I think both guys can be really good. One thing that I like about Harris, he's got great lateral movement for a guy of that size. I don't know if he quite has the high-end speed of Dante Dowdell, because that is the sort of thing that can get you, really noticed by Division I schools and by major recruiting services. I don't know why he was at a Division II school, but I think he's going to fit in just fine. And I don't expect him to be a big contributor to the running back room next year, but I think that he adds some needed depth, a guy who's got some experience playing some level of college football, of course. And, now the running back room looks something like Noah Whittington, Jordan James, Jaden Lamar. And then you've got Dejon Riggs coming in as well from the high school ranks, Bucky Irving off to the NFL. And then you add in Jay Harris, and that's a sufficiently deep running back room, at least in my view. Now, this question came in from John. Again, YouTube, Twitter, SUBTEXT, all ways to get questions answered here on the show. Spencer, regarding Oregon running backs, why does it seem that Oregon never recruits or brings in big, strong running backs in the 230 to 240 range? Just as a reminder, Jay Harris is 215 pounds. I always remember Jonathan Stewart, who was big, strong, fast running back. We seem to always bring in running backs that are in the 190 to 200 pound range. I'm sure in the high school ranks or in the transfer portal, there are big, strong, and fast running backs available, yet we don't ever seem to recruit those people. Why? I like where your head's at, John, thinking at that level of detail. I don't agree with your premise. Royce Freeman was kind of a tank. Thomas Tyner was a beast. Now, in the past years, you've certainly seen guys on the smaller side of things. I don't think there is a right or wrong way to recruit a style of running back, or I don't think there's a right or wrong style to recruit. I think it depends on your scheme, but I think that what Carlos Loughlin's running backs have all had in common, whether that's Bucky or Noah or Jordan James, or I think Jay Lamar's kind of got this as well. I think Dowdell had this too, is they rarely go down on first contact because they have such tremendous balance and lower body strength. I think those are the traits that he's looking for more so than, well, I want guys of a certain size, of a certain makeup, of, a certain style that'll fit with, this particular player, this particular scheme. But I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. I don't think having a diverse array of running backs and styles in your room is a bad thing at all. I think back to the Chip Kelly days, and that first backfield was LaMichael and Kenyon, same guy, right? LaMichael was, of course, a little better in college, though we later learned Kenyon was also very, very good. And then you had LeGarrette Blount as kind of the hammerback, the short yardage guy. You look at the backfield last year, right? It was Bucky and Noah Whittington, and Bucky was your, fight and scrap and, fine yards where they weren't always there sort of guy. Noah Whittington was your one cut downhill runner, and Jordan James was your short yardage guy. And that's just kind of what they were. And then this year, right, Whittington went down, and it was much more a hot hand between Bucky, who had some amazing games, most notably Washington State. You had Jordan James, who had some really, really good games as well. So I think that when you're looking at the running back position or any skill position, I don't think there's one guy you need to recruit. I just think you want to bring in a guy who's most effective. And by the way, tough to compare running backs, generally speaking, to Jonathan Stewart. That guy was a 5-star recruit. He's one of the 2 or 3 best running backs I think Oregon has had in the last, since the turn of the century, since I can really remember watching Oregon football. Like LaMichael would be 1. Jonathan Stewart is probably number 2. I'm trying to think if there's anyone I'd put above him. At least in my lifetime, I wouldn't. Jeremiah Johnson was great. Freeman was good. I was always high on Thomas Tyner. Of course, Bucky is amazing. And a lot of guys have been really good. But those are probably the 2 best running backs of all time. And, they played essentially in the same system. It's about having, I think, certain underlying characteristics, like the ability to cut laterally or the ability to, work in a spread scheme. And, LaMichael was so perfect for that particular scheme. But, when you're a power running team, Mario Cristobal wanted a guy more like CJ Verdell that's not afraid to contact and wants to run through guys and just, kind of plow ahead and establish that physicality. So I think that it's scheme dependent, but I think for Loughlin, there is a consistent theme here. And when you watch Jay Harris, he's got this trait as well. Carlos Loughlin wants dudes that can stay balanced, which makes them tough to tackle. And I think that Jay Harris has that, and that's why he's a fit here. But good question. This one came in from Rick. Jordan James averaged 7.1 yards per carry this year as RB2. Do you think he is RB1 next year? This is tough because I really like Jordan James. I was always high on him. I said at one point before this season started, like, I feel like Jordan James can be more than just a short yardage guy. And this year, Oregon needed him to be more than that. And he was. And he was really, really good. And if Jordan James is RB1 next year, I think it's because Whittington doesn't come back healthy. It's easy to get caught up in the moment and recency bias and say, oh man, James was so good, he's going to be the lead guy. If Whittington comes back healthy, he was ahead of James on the depth chart for a reason, because he too is good in short yardage and he too makes great lateral cuts. And I think he's got a little bit more top end speed than Jordan James does. But I think James is slightly better in the short yardage situations, but that's why I want to have them both. And if Jaden Lamar is kind of the, third back in there who catches passes every now and then, I'm on board for that. I think that's a really, really strong running back room. And, if Whittington is not fully healthy and James is RB1, guess what? The backfield is going to be just fine. And I think I think Oregon, like, very quietly is running back university, at least at the college level, right? You can talk about how successful those guys have been in the NFL and whatnot. That's fair. But when was the last time Oregon didn't have really good running backs? I legitimately, like, the worst time of running backs would be like CJ Verdell and Travis Dye. And guess what? Travis Dye was our entire offense in 2021, and CJ Verdell was the Pac-12 championship MVP in 2019. And both guys ran for a couple thousand yards in their careers and were just wildly productive. I don't think they were the most high-end guys, but if those are your least productive running backs, running back University West, that would be the University of Oregon, full stop. All right, there was another transfer that Oregon picked up before I get to a couple of mailbag questions here. That transfer's name is Matthew Bedford. He comes over as an interior offensive lineman from Indiana. Next year will be his 6th season of college football. He's been in Bloomington for the last 5 playing for the Hoosiers, and their coach was relieved of his duties. They made a change there, and he's going to play his final year of college football as a 6th-year player with the Ducks. He made 38 starts in 41 games whilst at Indiana. He had a PFF grade just under 70. He was the highest graded offensive lineman that the Hoosiers had a season ago, which isn't saying a ton if it was just under 70, but that's a respectable grade, right? 70 is kind of the threshold for, what you'd consider to be a good grade, like 70 to 80, good player, 80 to 90, above average player, well above average, 90 and above, elite of the elite, creme de la creme, best of the best. So, he was just under 70. That's solid. That's a pretty good grade. He has played all spots along the offensive line in his career except center. Now, most of his starts have come at guard, but this sort of positional versatility has been invaluable to Oregon over the last couple of years, and they're continuing with that trend. So Bedford has made starts at left tackle, left guard, and right guard. He was at right guard last year for Indiana. That's where I figure he slots in. I think it's pretty unlikely that a 6th-year player who also was previously committed to going to Colorado, but now says his recruitment is done and he's coming to Eugene to be a Duck. I think a guy like that who's played that much football and who was going to play for the Buffs, I don't think he comes to Oregon without some kind of guarantee that he's going to be a starter. So I imagine that is where he slides in at the right guard spot to replace Stephen Jones, which is ironic because Jones a season ago was also a 6th-year player. And so swapping out one super experienced guy for another, I think is a good move for the Ducks, but the ability to move him around, I think is what makes him, even more appealing. And one question that I thought about when this commitment came down, which kind of came out of nowhere, was, well, what does this mean for Caden Green? So Caden Green is a really, really highly regarded interior offensive lineman from Oklahoma who Oregon has, reportedly been after for a while now. I don't know if it means they won't go after him. What I do know is it means they don't need to go after him if they don't want to. They still could if they feel that he's better than Marcus Harper, but Harper's been a starter the last couple of seasons and I think got much better at run blocking this year after being just okay a season ago. And he's always been an elite pass blocker. So I don't feel like that's a position of need. And I think the backups that you have there are also more than capable. The Davey Ulis of the world, who in his limited playing time, I think has been quite good. I don't think Oregon needs Caden Green, but again, you never know when injuries are going to happen. So, and there are other interior offensive linemen that are on the Ducks roster right now as well. So I don't think they need to get Caden Green. If they do, great. Then the offensive line is looking absolutely stacked. But right now, I'd say the starting offensive line next year, if you ask me today, which is what I'm doing to myself, of course, I'd say left tackle Connerly, left guard Harper, Poncho at center. I think you'd probably have Bedford at right guard and then Johnny Cornelius right tackle. And I think that's a really good unit. I think that's another really, really good unit. So I like this move. I'm always a fan of getting veteran players, and maybe they still get Caden Green. And as Luke Moga tweeted out when Dante Moore committed, our 3-star quarterback commit in the 2024 cycle, iron sharpens iron. So the more talented guys you got, the more I'm on board with it. Let's go back into the mailbag here. YouTube comments, Twitter, always SUBTEXT as well, where you can get priority. This from our boys 4539. Do you see more high school 3- and 4-star quarterbacks going to a lower level college to build their resume to transfer later? after getting experience? No, I do not. You also need to define lower level. Like, are 4-star quarterbacks going to suddenly commit out of high school to FCS programs? No, I do not believe so. 3-star quarterbacks, and frankly, the occasional 4-star, but mostly 3-star guys, have committed to group of 5 schools, Mountain West, Sun Belt, Conference USA, American. They've been doing that for a long time. And I don't expect that to change at all. The reason is that when those guys end up playing their careers elsewhere at the end, it's oftentimes because they were once coveted by a Power 5 FBS school. And so, I do play-by-play for Southern Utah, for those who don't know, which is a Division I FCS school. And one thing that is really prevalent across FCS college football right now are FBS dropdowns, are Power 5 dropdowns, particularly at the quarterback position. Over the last couple of years, there have been no less than 8 to 10 guys who, I've put onto my spotting boards, who I notice are dropdowns from schools like Tennessee or Washington State, or FBS G5 like Middle Tennessee, or places like that. It's super, super common. And I think that for those guys coming out of high school, they feel that they are talented enough to start at that level. And I don't think that there's as big of an advantage or as big of a market for quarterbacks coming up from the FCS level as there is for an FBS drop down like that. So I think to play their hand in the strongest possible fashion, it's actually best for them to go to a Power 5 school, see how that program operates, learn from, a high caliber coaching staff potentially, and then see what sorts of teams are going to go after you if you end up not playing there, or can't find a path to starting and whatnot. That makes you more intriguing having been at a school like that than you would be as just a 3 or 4-star high school recruit going there straight out of the gate. I mean, FCS schools would take them out of high school, certainly, but I don't think that they're going to just go straight there, because if they have a chance to go to a Power 5 school and compete for a starting job, they're going to take that first and know that, going to a G5 or an FCS school is always a fallback option. But good question. This question came in from Skirt Mayo. Having multiple starters miss significant time, this is about basketball, by the way, at the beginning of the season and costing us multiple wins that are losses, costs us going into March Madness. Spencer, is it a concern that we get plagued with injuries early in the season and never being close to full strength all season, whether it's multiple starters, bench players, or a combination of both, missing significant time, whether it's the beginning of the season or throughout? Let me know your thoughts, Sco Ducks. So this comes on the heels of Oregon's, disappointing but not season-ending loss on Sunday against Syracuse, in which the Ducks had just 7 scholarship players available. So the Ducks are currently 7-3. They have a couple of Power 5 non-conference wins, but neither of them are against high-level teams. So as they go throughout Pac-12 play on the men's side, and this applies to the women as well, they're going to need to pick up a lot of wins, and they'll have opportunities to do so against really good teams. But the question about the injuries is really frustrating. It's really frustrating because bigs still play such a big role in college basketball, more so than they do in the NBA. And for some reason, Oregon's been snake bitten with injuries. Now, part of that is, and N'Faly Dante has been around the Ducks for a long time, and he's been hampered with injuries his entire career. But Nate Biddle's currently hurt. And a couple of years ago, Frank Kepnong, who's at Washington and we could really use right now, he got hurt the last time he was with the Ducks and then went into the transfer portal. And that's just some bad luck. But part of it is also that, N'Faly Dante is still there, and he's, first team all conference when he's healthy and playing. But I think that for Oregon, it has absolutely been brutal. Like, this is not a slow start by Dana Altman standards. Their losses have been to a good Santa Clara team, my alma mater, at the mid-major level, Alabama, who's an NCAA tournament caliber team, and Syracuse, who's also a Power 5 NCAA tournament caliber program. And I think their team may very well be this season as well. But if the big men are there, Oregon is no worse than 8-2, and they're probably 9-1, because the defense has been a massive problem. The offense struggled on Sunday. Shellstad was, put out of sorts by a really good Syracuse defending guard. Happens to a true freshman. I'm not that worried about it. And then Keyshawn Bartholomew didn't play either. Like, if you have 7 scholarship guys available, this happened last year against, I think it was Villanova. And Oregon, I think actually won the game. They had like 6 scholarship players available. Maybe it was 7, and Will Richardson went off. They might have actually lost, but it was, I remember it being a heck of an effort. It's frustrating. And I'm not panicked about it yet as it pertains to Oregon's tournament chances. I really want them to make the tournament. I love March Madness. I want Oregon to be a part of it. I think they have a lot of things that you need to make a run in March Madness, but they have to have the bigs because Dana Altman's teams defensively have always been centered around having a big shot blocker in the middle. And when they're not there, it's absolutely crushing. And Oregon can't stop a soul. And teams are able to get inside, then everyone collapses. That opens up shooters. When there isn't a big shot blocking presence in there, and Mo Diawara is doing a heck of a job filling in, but he's supposed to be the number 3 big, not the number 1 big. And I think that is showing. And he was in foul trouble against Syracuse too. So when that happens, Oregon is now down to 6 scholarship players and thinking about playing Ryan Cooper, a walk-on big. Like that's just not going to get you anywhere. And if Oregon gets healthy, and N'Faly Dante is supposed to be reevaluated sometime later this week, if Oregon gets healthy going in Pac-12 play, they can be a really good team. They can be a 23 to 25 win team, I think, and they can do a lot of good things. But they have to get healthy. And if they don't, yeah, there's definitely a ceiling there. They still have a bunch of great guard play, which is vital in college basketball, but defensively, they need those bigs so badly because they just are not able to have any defensive rhythm. It hurts them offensively, but really it's defensively. They can't get consistent stops, and they allow too many easy buckets when they don't have their bigs on the floor. Great question. I love the men's basketball question. I'm always following along with that sort of stuff. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.